Hey, I'm Brian Reich. I'm an IT guy at a local school, and I do IT consulting on the side. I'm not anybody important in my field. I'm no leader, and I'm not even very good at speaking up about things that I believe in. But a big part of my job is trying to make people that aren't so good with technology understand it and do their job. So I kind of feel a little bit of an obligation to help other people understand this whole net neutrality debate and help them understand why they should be angry as hell about it. So you might have heard about net neutrality in the news and not really understood what they were talking about. Well, basically, net neutrality is the principle that internet service providers like Windstream Communications and Verizon and Comcast and AT&T, basically they all have to treat data the same no matter where it came from, where it's going, or what that data does. For example, if I pay a monthly fee for a 1 megabit per second internet connection through Verizon, barring any extraneous circumstances, that's exactly what I should get, whether I'm using that 1 megabit internet connection to watch Netflix or whether I'm using it to do research for school. So for the last couple of years, internet service providers in the United States have been operating under a ruling from the FCC that said that they can't block lawful content and they can't discriminate against unlawful content. Basically what that means is if you're doing something that's legal on the internet, they can't throttle your bandwidth. They can't make it go slower based on what you're doing. They can't block the website that you're trying to get to. They basically can't interfere with your freedom of speech on the internet. However, if you're doing something illegal, for example, if you're using the Pirate Bay website, can they block that? Yeah. Can they throttle your bandwidth for using file sharing services like BitTorrent to trade illegal files? Yeah. Can they suspend your account for illegal activity? Absolutely. Actually, I had a roommate that happened to a long time ago. However, can they do that same thing if you're just watching Netflix or you're just exploring a completely legitimate website, like maybe a competitor to Verizon? No, they can't do that. So now the question is, what changed and why am I so ticked off? Well, let me put it to you this way. So hypothetically speaking, let's say you ordered a book from Amazon.com and you selected premium shipping when you ordered that book. Tomorrow, if UPS called and said that your book wasn't on their employee book club's top 10 list and they decided to charge you an extra $5 for it to get there on time, would you think that's fair? Last Tuesday, the D.C. Circuit Court decided that the FCC has no jurisdiction to enforce net neutrality based on the fact that internet service providers aren't considered a common carrier like telephone and cable providers. Well, what's a common carrier? Basically, a common carrier is a private company that's been given authority by the government to transport goods, in this case, goods being data going across the wire. And in exchange for that authority, the company has to respect the rules and regulations that the government puts in place. A few good examples of this are oil and gas pipelines. They're considered a common carrier, as are telephone and cable, as you probably already know. Now, for any of this to make any kind of sense, you've either got to be willfully ignorant or Amish, because anybody that gets a phone bill or a cable bill knows that these are usually the same companies. The same people that offer internet service usually offer phone service, they usually offer cable service. But while their phone service and their cable service fall under FCC jurisdiction, they say hands off to our internet. So basically, the internet service providers have stepped up to big government and told them to keep their hands off their internet business. Is this a good thing? I suppose it depends on which side of the ISP's monthly bill you're on. Because this debate isn't so much about keeping the internet free so much as whose label is going to be on the shackles. So ISPs have been arguing that bringing internet service under the FCC's control would hurt technology, that basically it's going to slow down growth and it's going to raise costs. Well, and if we were talking about full regulatory powers, that might be true. They might have a point. The problem is that's not what we're talking about. Up until last week, the FCC had a single rule for internet service providers, and that was that they can't block or discriminate against legal content. So, by their own arguments, internet service in America should have been cheap and it should have been cutting edge, and we all know that's nowhere near the case. Have you ever heard the phrase, the myth of American exceptionalism? That applies nowhere better than it does with telecommunications in this country. Last I checked, we're in 8th place worldwide, somewhere behind such economic powers as Latvia and the Czech Republic. Now, 8th place isn't bad, except when you consider that we're getting so much less for paying so much more than everybody else. Where I live, there's still people who only have dial-up internet access, and the internet's just not built for those kind of speeds anymore. Checking your email is a chore that takes half the night, and doing any kind of research or watching a video is just impossible. Now, I'm not going to argue that people who don't have broadband internet access are going to starve to death or anything, but it most definitely affects their education, and in turn their employment possibilities are going to suffer as well. Now, other countries see the writing on the wall with this. I don't know why we don't. At this point, if you still feel like you need to rush to the side of such mom-and-pop establishments as AT&T and Verizon and Comcast, consider this. Every byte that travels across the internet has already been paid for twice. You and I, we pay for our internet connections at home. I pay a certain amount for my 10 megabit internet connection from Windstream, and that entitles me to send and receive at a given rate for a certain number of gigabytes a month. I have no idea what that is, but the point is I've paid for it. And the websites that I visit, they've paid for it too. I host several websites myself, so I kind of know what I'm talking about. But in my hosting fees that I pay every month, a certain amount of that goes for a certain amount of bandwidth that my website can use. Larger sites like YouTube or Facebook, they usually lease a larger internet connection from a larger telecom, but the point is they're paying for their internet connection. Now, some people here in the United States say that profit shouldn't be a dirty word. Well, I agree, but it shouldn't be the only word either. Look at all the amazing ideas that have been created on an open internet. You've got Wikipedia, you've got YouTube, you've got Khan Academy. There's more human knowledge in those 3 free services than there's ever been in all of the great libraries of the world throughout history combined. And yet none of these services could have survived on a restrictive internet. These ideas would have died on the vine. Now just consider competition for a second. Now I'm not talking about internet piracy. As far as I'm concerned, that's illegal and they have every right to block it. I'm talking about legal options like Netflix. It seems a little bit suspect to me that the people that are lobbying against internet neutrality are the same people that are the gatekeepers of the internet, who are the same people that own the cable television access too. I find that just a little bit suspect. It seems to me they would have no reason to want us to be able to get to Netflix or want us to get to YouTube or Hulu or any of those services that are in direct competition with their other business, cable television. Of course, they would want the legal authority from the government to be able to block those services entirely or make them slow enough to be unusable, or to just put them in a position where they'd have to charge more to be completely unreasonable to the consumer. Now, folks like Verizon are going to try and tell you that services like Netflix need to pay more of a premium for all that bandwidth they're using every month. Well, the fact of the matter is, Netflix is already paying for their massive amount of bandwidth. I'm already paying for my bandwidth, so that episode of Dexter that I'm going to watch while I fall asleep tonight, it's already been paid for twice, and there's no reason other than stifling competition and just massive amounts of profiteering that anybody should have to pay any more, or any reason why a system that already works should be changed. I'm getting a service that I want. Netflix is making money, and let me tell you what, my ISP is definitely making money. Now you might be saying to yourself right now, Brian, chill out, it's just the internet, it's pretty unimportant. Well, it's not. More than any other social topic that I could think of right now, this affects everybody. As far as I'm concerned, until we figure out space travel and clean energy, the internet is the pinnacle of human achievement. This is the best we've done. The internet contains the best and worst of what we are as a species. It documents the most vile atrocities we've ever committed. And at the same time, it's leveled the playing field and given access to knowledge and information and education to absolutely everybody. As consumers, we've already allowed our ISPs to have us over a barrel in terms of cost and quality of service. And if we let them overturn net neutrality, we're allowing them to fundamentally change the way the internet works, not just for us, but for the entire world. And this is not an American technology. If we allow this to happen, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Not just as Americans, not just as consumers, but as humans in general. We'll be letting them fundamentally change one of the greatest things we've ever created for the sake of making a buck. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you have any questions, shoot me a comment or an email. Take care.